Hello everyone, my name is Kate Harrell and I'm a registered dietitian here at the university, teaching in the kinesiology department, and I also do nutrition work through the Oshkosh and Neenah Menasha YMCAs. Our topic for today is the lovely topic of fad diets, which is one of my favorites. Not so much. One of the big things I've seen lately is just a lot of confusion, frustration, and truly stress that's associated with what diet am I supposed to be on? Is this the right way? Is this not the right way? So hopefully today we'll talk about some helpful things that'll help you better look at fad diets in the future, and maybe some recommendations on safer or healthier approaches that can help with long-term weight loss and healthy eating. So the first question is, what are some of the biggest issues with fad diets, and why might there be some concern with jumping on kind of that fad diet bandwagon? Truly, one of the big things that I think is an issue is most of the fad diets don't address the behaviors that led to the issue in the first place. So, yes, we have this fad diet that works for this short chunk of time, but if we haven't addressed the behavior, we're going to be back at square one at the end of that diet. And so, what we tend to see is weight rebounding, kind of the yo yo idea. So, truly, again, one of the things I think is an issue is not looking at the behaviors and just setting this temporary eating plan to lead to that weight loss. I think part of the fad diets often they don't build in the maintenance plan as well, and I think some of that's marketing. So, what is the transition plan to go back to quote unquote normal eating when you're done with this diet plan? So another concern with fad diets is when they start to remove food groups or specific foods. We have the food groups because each food group is associated with a different family of nutrients that our body needs. So once we start to pull those out, which we've seen with some of the low carb diets, diets that are kicking out the grains, maybe even kicking out the fruit, we lose all the nutrients associated within that group. So whole grains, for example, we get a lot of B vitamins, which are pretty critical for energy reactions. Fruits, and even some of the starchy vegetables are going to have a lot of phytonutrients, so things specific to plants that help to protect us against disease. So we really don't want to pull those out, or we have to get really strategic on putting something else back in. Long term, certainly this can present an issue if someone sticks with some of these diet patterns for a longer chunk of time. So another thing we're starting to see is some of these fad diet patterns, and especially when people get on a cycle of one fad diet after another, actually may trend towards more of disordered eating patterns. Truly, I'm starting to see quite a bit of stress surrounding food. People literally coming into my office saying, I don't want to eat anything anymore. Food should really be an enjoyable thing. So we want to be mindful that this doesn't lead to other unhealthy patterns that could have a long-term impact on people. So anytime you're looking at a fad diet or trying to approach a fad diet and find more information, there's certainly some keywords, key phrases that you may want to be mindful of. One of the ones that definitely raises a red flag for me is when it tells you not to exercise on this plan. Nutrition and exercise should really go hand in hand, and so we don't want to remove that. We want to keep that in the picture. Oftentimes the fad diet's pretty restrictive, so they don't want you exercising so that you don't lose too much energy to get through the day. The emphasis on a really quick fix, a really rapid weight loss, usually we tend to see that, again, that rebound, that yo-yoing idea. So more of a slow, longer term weight loss that someone can maintain is going to be a better approach. Bottom line, claims that are too good to be true certainly would raise a red flag for somebody. Another one that comes to mind is separating good and bad foods. So we should be able to include a lot of different foods in our diet and not put them into these categories of good or bad. Again, that kind of ties back into that disordered eating and how we view food, and we want to keep a positive light around food. Last but not least, I think a concern would be buying products associated with a fad diet. Ultimately, we want people eating food. And if they're really emphasizing buying these products or these supplements, I think that really kind of leads back to they're probably focusing more on the money and financial side of this fad diet versus the actual health of you and those that are partaking in it. So the question is, what are some of the current fad diets that are more concerning as a dietitian? I think we all know that low carb diets are very popular right now. I have actually seen some people struggling with medical issues related to this, an inability to maintain energy levels throughout the day. If they are active, I see some people struggling, especially with higher intensity activity, to be able to complete their workout. Also, things like fiber oftentimes get pulled out. So, I had someone that I was working with on the keto diet who literally had 1 gram of fiber coming in for the day. That lack of fiber, we're actually seeing some articles on how that may negatively impact the gut and the gut bacteria when we're not providing that fuel for the bacteria. So ultimately, with any fad diet, we have to make sure that we keep health in mind first and foremost. So the more restrictive it is in terms of pulling out foods, food groups, we really have to be careful that we're not harming people in the process. My other big concern is how restrictive some of these fad diets are, and seeing people really kind of shift into these stress eating patterns, negatively reacting to foods, not enjoying foods, not being able to go out to eat and have a good experience with that. And so, that for me, long term, I don't want someone to have such a negative environment surrounding food when food's going to be part of our everyday life. So, on the flip side, what are some of the diet patterns that might be beneficial? I think one that's awesome is the Mediterranean diet. We can take the food groups and build it to support health. I think any diet that really focuses in on whole food, plant based food is going to be really helpful. Looking at portion control, I think, is pretty important. A lot of us struggle with how much do we really need. Portions have become pretty skewed. Another interesting pattern or healthy eating way that has become a little more popular is intuitive eating. Kind of the flip side of getting stressed out and emotionally eating in response to things is gaining more of a perspective of how to eat mindfully and reconnecting with, are we satisfied with what we're eating? Does this food actually nourish us from the inside out? And sometimes I think that's where we need to speak to help with some of the behaviors that led to the weight gain in the first place. So, one new thing in nutrition that is hopefully going to be on most of the food products coming forward is our new food label. The food label can be really helpful if you're looking at some of the food products that you or your family are consuming. One of the neat things with the new label, we're going to better be able to differentiate between added sugars and natural, which is definitely one big buzz that we have with nutrition right now. So the new food label will actually indicate how much of that product's carbohydrates or the sugars within it are coming from artificial sources. So that's certainly going to help us make better choices moving forward. Other things, speaking back to the portion control, if you were to have a 20-ounce bottle of soda, which hopefully we're not doing, it'll now indicate on that label the calories related to that full 20 ounces. So they've adjusted some of the portion sizes more to what people would consume so that they can visibly see the impact of some of those choices, which I think will be a little bit more eye-opening. You can always look down into that ingredients list. My thing first and foremost is the fewer the ingredients, the better. And ingredients that we can actually understand and know what they are instead of mystery ingredients that we don't quite know what they actually are. So the shorter list, the better. We can certainly find some of those sugars down in that ingredients list if they haven't updated that food label. So syrups, words that end in OSE are certainly a good thing to look at, and how much of those are coming in. We can tell whole grains versus whole wheat, for example, down in there. So that would be something like with a bread or a different type of grain or cereal that you might be buying. You can look down in that ingredients list to see if they've actually included a whole grain. So those are some of the helpful tips on that new food label. Ideally, if we can, moving away from foods that actually have the food label and more towards, again, those whole foods, the plant-based foods, that can really give us a good impact on our health and help us feel a little more satisfied from the inside out.